The fading sunlight streamed through the windows of the mansion, casting a golden glow over the marble floor. The sound of the key turning in the lock echoed, and the door swung open. But Brent Carter, a powerful billionaire and devoted single father, didn't stride in with his usual confidence. The leather briefcase slipped from his tense fingers, hitting the floor with a hard thud that echoed in the eerily silent house. Every sense in his body locked on a single image: his son, Eli, curled up at the foot of the stairs. Eli, his fragile 6-year-old boy, clutched his head with both hands, his small body trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. Looming over him was a figure, a shadow that froze Brent's blood. Maya Williams, the 29-year-old live-in housekeeper he had trusted with his child, stood there. One hand gripped Eli's arm, the other clutched a towel stained bright red with blood at one end. The sight hit Brent like a gut punch, knocking the air from his lungs. His entire world felt like it was shattering. "Let go of my son!" Brent's voice cracked like a whip, taut with a fury that barely stayed leashed. He lunged forward, every instinct of a protective father surging to the surface. Startled, Maya released Eli instantly. The boy bolted, flinging himself into his father's arms, sobs shaking his tiny frame. Brent held him tight, his own heart breaking as he felt every shiver that ran through his child's body. When Brent looked down, tears streaked Eli's dirt-smudged face, but what turned his blood to ice was the swollen red mark blooming on his son's forehead. The fire inside him roared to life, a blaze fueled by pure rage. He turned his burning gaze on Maya. "What the hell happened here?" he thundered. Maya stepped back, palms raised as though trying to soothe a wild animal. "Mr. Carter, please, just stay calm." He slipped in the bathroom. "I was only trying to help him up." "You call this helping?" Brent jabbed a finger toward the blood-stained towel, his words dripping with venom. "Do you think I'm stupid?" "No, sir. Maya's voice faltered, choking on her own words. "Then explain why my boy looks like someone threw him against a wall," Brent snapped, not giving her room to breathe. "I didn't hurt him," Maya said firmly, though her voice trembled. "I would never hurt Eli. He panicked, he ran, and he fell. I was just stopping the bleeding." Her words floated in the air, desperate, unheard. Brent ignored her, his focus turning back to the child in his arms. His tone softened unexpectedly. "Son, what happened? Tell Daddy." Eli hesitated, wide eyes darting toward Maya and then back to his father. Silence hung heavy, broken only by quiet sobs. At last, a fearful whisper slipped out. "She hit me." Brent's heart nearly stopped. "She did what?" he growled. Eli clung tighter, as if to shield himself. "She got mad. I dropped the vase. She hit me with the towel." "No!" Maya cried out, her voice cracking under the weight of helplessness. "No, Eli, that's not—" Brent raised a hand, cutting her off. "Get out of my sight," he snarled, every syllable coated with hatred. "If you come near him again—" Maya staggered back, stunned. "I didn't do this." Brent didn't hear her anymore. He turned, clutching his son. "We're going to the hospital." The cold, sterile air of St. Agnes Memorial Hospital swallowed Brent's tension, but not his fury. He sat in the waiting area, holding Eli close as the boy nestled against him like a frightened bird. His mind was a whirlwind of images, questions, and an anger that felt endless. Dr. Ree, the attending physician, approached quietly. "Mr. Carter," she said gently. Brent shot to his feet, coiled tight as a spring. "Tell me what you found," he demanded. Her voice was calm, but her words cut deep. "There's no sign of a concussion, but the bruises on his arms and upper shoulders aren't consistent with a single fall. Some are at least 2 days old." "He's been with her the whole time," Brent bit out, Maya's face flashing in his mind. Dr. Ree nodded slightly. "There's also an abrasion on his wrist, likely from being restrained. We've filed a report. Child Protective Services will be notified." Brent looked down at Eli, whose eyes stared blankly ahead. He squeezed his son's tiny hand, whispering softly, "You did great, buddy." But Eli said nothing, his silence a weight that crushed Brent's chest. Back home, the air was heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Brent paced the kitchen while Maya stood near the doorway, hands limp at her sides. Under the harsh light, she looked younger, more fragile, but Brent's heart was stone. "You hurt my boy," he said, his tone like ice. "No, I didn't," Maya replied, voice shaky but firm. "He lied." "Don't you—" Brent started to snap. "I'm not calling him a liar," she rushed to say. "I'm saying he was scared. Kids, they say things like that when they're scared." "Exactly," Brent barked. "He's scared of you." "He's scared of you," Maya shot back, her voice suddenly steady, a truth breaking free. Brent froze mid-step. "Ask yourself," Maya continued, softer now. "Why would a child say something like that? Unless he's terrified of how you'll react." He blinked hard. "So now, this is my fault?" "I didn't say that," Maya said gently. "But I know Eli. He dropped your wife's vase. He panicked. He knows you'd be upset. He misses you, Brent. He didn't want you angry with him." Brent said nothing, guilt creeping in like a shadow he couldn't push away. He turned toward the stairs, his voice low. "Go upstairs." Later, he found Eli still awake, lying in bed with wide, worried eyes. Brent sat on the edge of the mattress, his heart aching at the fear etched on his son's face. "Eli," he said softly, patient, "I need you to tell me the truth. Not what you think I want to hear, just the truth." Eli's lips trembled. "Promise you won't get mad," Brent coaxed, "no matter what you say." After what felt like an eternity, a tiny whisper cracked the silence, shattering Brent's heart. "I dropped the vase and I was scared you'd yell at me, so I said she hit me." Brent stared at his son, stunned. "I'm sorry," Eli murmured. "She didn't hit me. She helped. She told me not to worry." Brent's throat burned with shame and regret. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was scared you'd be mad. Or leave." Those words hit Brent like a lightning strike. He wrapped his arms around Eli, holding on as tight as he could. "I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not mad at you. I promise." He stayed by his son's side long after Eli drifted off to sleep, torn apart by guilt and remorse. Anger now turned inward. Slowly, painfully, he began to realize that maybe, just maybe, he had gotten it all wrong. And in doing so, he had almost lost the one person who might have been his little boy's only safe place when he wasn't there. Downstairs, in the dimly lit hallway, Maya quietly packed her things, every item placed into the suitcase feeling like a knife slicing through her heart. She had no idea that upstairs, the truth had finally come to light, though it was likely too late for the scars to ever heal. She stood there, one hand resting on the oak banister, feeling its coldness seep into her skin, as chilling as the coldness of human hearts. The suitcase was only half zipped, her heartbeat pounding, not from guilt, but from the pain of injustice. She stared at the front door, time dragging as if hours had passed. She waited for something. Maybe the wail of police sirens, maybe the authoritative knock of officials, but nothing came. She had almost left. Almost. Then she heard footsteps approaching softly from behind. "Maya?" A low, hesitant voice broke the silence. "Brent." She slowly turned, eyes guarded. "Yes, Mr. Carter." Brent looked exhausted, not with the weariness of a long workday, but with the weight of a man who had destroyed something beyond repair. His tie hung loose, his shirt wrinkled. The once rigid, accusing expression on his face was now fractured by something she never expected. Regret. He drew in a long breath. "Eli told me the truth." Maya's face remained unreadable. Her hands slowly released their grip on the suitcase handle. "I see," she replied, her voice eerily calm. Brent rubbed the back of his neck, a habit of his when confusion or guilt overtook him. "He was scared. Thought I'd be mad about the vase. He said he panicked." "I figured," Maya said simply. Silence settled between them like a heavy mist, not the kind that needed breaking, but the kind that needed breathing through. Finally, Brent spoke again. "I owe you an apology. A real, honest apology." Maya arched a brow. "Do you?" He faltered, as if her question had hit somewhere he hadn't expected. "I accused you of something terrible. I believed my son, which I should have, but I didn't stop to ask about the fear behind his words. I didn't listen to you." "No," she agreed. "You didn't listen. I reacted, he admitted. I didn't think. You thought plenty, Maya said, her tone sharp now. You thought I was capable of hurting him. You thought the worst of me. He swallowed hard. I did. Why? She asked, her voice steady but charged. Because I'm young? Because I live in the staff quarters? Or because I'm black? Her words hit like a slap. Brent blinked, mouth parting, the response stuck in his throat. She didn't wait for an answer. You hired me to help raise your son, and the moment something went wrong, you saw me as a threat. You never gave me even a second to earn your trust. Brent looked away, shame etched deep into his features. You're right, he whispered. Maya gave a stiff nod. So what now? He met her gaze. I'm not asking you to stay. I don't have that right. But I want you to know, I'm sorry. Maya exhaled slowly through her nose. Her grip on the suitcase loosened, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. I love that boy, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I still do. And not because this is a job. Do you really think I stayed through your grief, your silence, your absence just for a paycheck? Eli needed someone to really see him. I saw him. Brent's voice turned rough. Now I see him too. Good, she said, but it might be too late for that to mean anything. Minutes passed in heavy quiet. Brent stood still as Maya turned back to the suitcase. She pulled the zipper slowly, each rasping sound like a final decision being made. Where will you go? He asked, his voice laced with worry. I have options, she said without looking at him. Other families are waiting, families who trust me. Do you trust me? He asked, risking the question. She paused, glancing over her shoulder. Not tonight. He nodded once, accepting it. I deserve that. As she stepped toward the door, a small voice floated down from the staircase. Maya? Both adults looked up. Eli stood on the landing in his rumpled pajamas, eyes still swollen from crying. He clung to the banister like it was the only thing holding him up. Why are you leaving? Maya dropped to her knees instinctively, her heart twisting. Sweetheart, I need to go for a little while. But why? His lower lip trembled. I told Dad the truth. I made it right. Oh, honey, she whispered, her chest aching. This isn't your fault. This is something grown-ups have to work out. I'm sorry I lied, he murmured. I was scared. I know you were. She opened her arms, and he ran, straight into them. She held him tight, as if this might be the last hug she'd ever give him. Brent stood off to the side, guilt pressing down on him like a weight. For the first time in years, he understood the true cost of his assumptions, not just to Maya, but to the boy clutching her like a lifeline. Maya kissed Eli's forehead. Be strong, okay? And remember, your voice matters, even when it shakes. Eli sniffled. Will you come back? She glanced toward Brent, her eyes saying more than words could. I don't know, she said softly. Maybe. That night, Brent sat alone in his study. The dim light pooled over the papers on his desk, but his mind wasn't on them. He thought about the shattered vase. He thought about his son's fear, and he thought about Maya, the woman he had rushed to condemn, the woman who had truly seen his child in a way he himself had forgotten how to. He knew the path to rebuilding trust would be long and grueling, but he had to start. For Eli. And maybe for himself, too. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, long shadows dancing on the walls, illuminating a single photograph on Brent's desk. In it, Eli and Maya were smiling, a pure, unguarded happiness frozen in time. Brent stared at the picture, feeling a sharp ache spread through his chest. The memory of how quickly he had condemned Maya sliced through him like a blade. He picked up his phone and dialed Janine, his voice heavy with fatigue. Janine, I messed up. I need your help. What happened? She asked, concern lacing her tone. I let fear be louder than reason. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Janine's voice softened. Then you don't fix that with words, Brent. You fix it with action. He nodded, though she couldn't see it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Good, she said firmly. Because trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself. You have to earn it back. I will, he promised, before hanging up. He sat there for a long moment, holding the photograph, listening to the wind whistling through the palms outside. And somewhere in that stillness, he heard his son's voice again. "I told you the truth, Dad. I made it right. But some truths come too late, and some wounds don't bleed. They just burn quietly forever." He didn't know if Maya would ever forgive him, but he knew one thing for certain. He would never again let silence speak louder than the truth. The next morning, the sun rose slow and heavy over the Carter estate. Brent sat in the kitchen, a steaming mug of coffee untouched in front of him. He hadn't slept a minute. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya's face, hurt, proud, and heartbreakingly quiet. Eli shuffled in, clutching his stuffed tiger, his hair a messy halo after a restless night. "Dad," he said, climbing onto a chair, "is Miss Maya coming back today?" The question hit Brent like a hammer to the chest. "No, buddy, not today." "What about tomorrow?" Brent's sigh was long and heavy. "I don't know, son." Eli lowered his head, twisting the tiger's tail between his fingers. "I don't want her to leave. I just didn't want you mad at me." Brent leaned down and took his son's small hand in his own. "I know you were scared, and I should have understood that. I should have protected both of you. Can we say sorry to her?" Eli's voice was tiny, fragile. Brent managed a faint pained smile. "I hope we'll get that chance." Later that afternoon, Brent sat in his office, staring blankly at the pile of contracts and reports on his desk. His assistant had cleared his schedule, citing urgent family matters. But it wasn't just family. This was a reckoning, a battle with his own conscience. He opened Maya's personnel file. Every letter of recommendation, every glowing word of trust and respect leapt off the page, and he felt each one cut deeper. Yet he had shredded all of that with one fear-driven assumption. He picked up his phone and called Janine again. "She's not answering," he said hoarsely. "Did you think she would?" Janine replied gently. "I need to make this right." "Brent," Janine said, her tone firm but kind, "stop making this about you. She's the one who was hurt. You can't patch this up with a bouquet and a sorry." "I know," he admitted, "but I can't just let her disappear. She's important, to Eli, to me." "Then prove it," Janine said. "Not with words, with effort." 3 long days passed, with no replies to his calls or emails. Each voicemail he left sounded more stripped bare, more desperate, more sincere. Still, silence answered him back. On Friday evening, Brent drove across the city to a modest brownstone in a quiet Culver City neighborhood. He wasn't sure if she still lived there, but it was the only address he had. He knocked. Nothing. He waited. And just as he turned to leave, the door creaked open. Maya stood there barefoot, wearing a worn gray t-shirt and faded jeans. Her eyes were tired but steady, her expression unreadable. Brent cleared his throat. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said quickly. "That's yours to give or not. I just came to return this." He pulled a small, slightly tattered sketchbook from his coat pocket. Maya's breath hitched. "Eli drew this last night," Brent explained softly. "He said it's a picture of his family. You're in it." She didn't reach for the book. Her arms stayed folded, her gaze guarded. "What do you want, Mr. Carter?" He hesitated, searching for words. "I want to understand. I want to listen, not to defend myself, just to hear you." Maya studied him for a long, tense moment. Then, slowly, she opened the door wider. 10 minutes. Inside, her small apartment was neat, almost too neat. The kettle on the stove whistled softly as she poured tea into 2 mugs. Brent stood awkwardly, near the window until she sat down across from him. "You don't have to pretend it's okay," he said finally, his voice low. "You have every right to hate me." "I don't hate you," she said evenly. "I just don't trust you." He nodded, swallowing hard. "That's fair." She set the mug down, fixing him with a steady gaze. "Do you know how many times I've been guilty first, innocent later?" Brent met her eyes without flinching. "No," he admitted. "But I believe you." She didn't blink. "When you walked in that night, you didn't ask questions. You saw Eli crying and decided it had to be me. The worst part is, I wasn't even surprised. That kind of judgment, I've seen it before." Brent's throat tightened. I wish I could say I was different, he said quietly. But I failed. Not just you, I failed Eli too. Maya gave a small, sad nod. You did. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, carrying all the weight of what had been lost. Finally, Maya spoke again. I loved being there, not for the house, not for the paycheck, for him. Eli made my days lighter. After he lost his mom, I tried to give him comfort no one else could, not even you. But you only ever saw me as help. Her words struck like a bell, ringing in Brent's chest long after they faded. They weren't just the truth. They were the pain of a woman who had given her heart and been rewarded with suspicion. This wasn't an ending, Brent realized. This was the beginning of a long, hard road to rebuild trust. A road he had no right to expect her to walk with him, but one he had to travel nonetheless. Brent sat across from them, quietly observing. There was something sacred about this scene, warm and peaceful. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Suddenly, Eli asked a question that made both adults freeze. Daddy, the little boy said, never looking up from the puzzle pieces in his hands, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? Brent paused before answering slowly. Yes, once. A long time ago. What happened? Eli asked, frowning. I stayed quiet, Brent said softly. I let people think what they wanted, and it hurt. I wish someone had believed me. Did anybody ever say they were sorry? Eli pressed. Brent glanced briefly at Maya, then back at his son. Eventually, yes, but it took time. Grown-ups make mistakes too. What matters is whether they try to make things right. Maya looked at Brent, surprised by the honesty in his tone, by the humility that wasn't there before. They finished the puzzle in silence. The last piece clicked into place, and Eli shouted with delight, Yeah! As the sun dipped low, Maya stood up. I should get going. Eli's face fell. Can't you stay for dinner? She smiled gently. Next time, okay? Then she turned to Brent. He's doing better. He is, Brent admitted. Because of you. No, she said firmly. Because he's stronger than both of us. Brent walked her to the door. Just before stepping out into the rain, Maya turned back. Brent, don't let him carry this weight. He's just a kid. Let him be carefree. Brent nodded slowly. I will. And Maya, thank you for not slamming the door shut on us. She gave a tired smile. I didn't do it for you. I know, he said quietly. He stood there for a long time after she left, letting the cool evening breeze wash over his face. Eli appeared beside him, silent for a moment before asking, Daddy, is she mad at us? Brent looked down at his son. She's not mad. She's hurt. And hurt takes time to heal. Eli leaned into him. We're going to make it right, aren't we? Brent wrapped his arm around his boy's shoulders. Yes, he whispered, one piece at a time. 2 weeks passed since Maya's visit. 2 weeks of gentle progress, quiet conversations, nights spent building puzzles, and slow, careful routines that felt like healing. Brent began picking Eli up from school himself, no longer leaving it to staff. He was there at bedtime, there at breakfast. And maybe, for the first time since his wife had passed away, he was truly present, not just in the house, but in his own heart. Still, an emptiness lingered in the corners of their home. It wasn't the grief anymore, it was the absence of the person who had once filled the cracks in their broken lives. Brent didn't dare reach out. He respected Maya's space. Yet every night, as he passed her old room, he stopped for just a second, enough to remember the sound of her laughter echoing down the hallway. One Wednesday afternoon, Brent and Eli were in the yard, struggling to build a tiny birdhouse. Every time they got a wall up, it collapsed. Eli giggled uncontrollably. Daddy, you're not good at this, he teased. Brent laughed. Thanks, kiddo. I hope you say that again once we actually finish it. Pretty sure Miss Maya would have had it done by now. His smile faltered a little. Yeah, she probably would have. Eli looked up seriously. Can I call her? Brent hesitated. I don't want her to feel pressured, but she did say you could talk to her any time. And I want to tell her something, Eli said with determination. Brent studied his son's earnest face and finally nodded. All right, go ahead. Eli ran inside and came back with Brent's phone. He tapped a few times and held it to his ear. Brent watched from the yard, his chest tight. "Hi, Miss Maya," Eli chirped when the call connected. "Guess what? We're making a birdhouse, and it's terrible." There was a pause, then a giggle from Eli. "No, Daddy's trying hard, but the walls keep falling. I think the hammer's too big." Brent managed a small, crooked smile as Eli went on. "I miss you, but I'm okay. Daddy's better now. We talk every day." Eli turned and held the phone out. "She wants to talk to you." Brent took it, his grip steady despite the tension inside him. "Hey," Maya's voice was gentle. "Sounds like you're building more than just a birdhouse over there." "I'm trying," he said, his voice low. "Still got a lot of bent nails." After a beat, he added, "Thank you. Not just for taking his call, but for giving him something to hold on to. Even now." "I never stopped caring," Maya replied softly. "I just had to care from a distance." Brent nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see him. "I get that now." There was a quiet pause before Maya spoke again. "Listen, my cousin's opening a community center downtown. After-school programs, mentoring, a reading room. They need volunteers. I signed up." "That's wonderful," Brent said sincerely. "You'll be amazing at it." "They're looking for someone to help with Saturday story time. Maybe even teach the kids how to build stuff." Brent smiled faintly. "Even birdhouses." She gave a soft laugh. "Maybe that's where you come in." Brent blinked, her words hitting him like a door gently swinging open. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a chance. A chance to start stitching something new together, to finally become part of the good he'd let slip away for far too long. "You're asking me to volunteer?" Brent hesitated. "I want Eli to see his dad giving back," Maya said. "And I want to know if you really mean it when you say you want to do better." Brent nodded, his voice steady. "I'm in." Saturday came, cloudy and cool. The community center sat tucked between a library and a small corner market, its walls painted in bright, welcoming colors. Children poured inside, their laughter echoing off the walls. Eli gripped Brent's hand tightly, his eyes wide with curiosity. Maya greeted them at the door, clipboard in hand, wearing a pale green sweater that matched the calmness in her gaze. She smiled at Eli, then looked at Brent, not distant this time, but open, cautiously so. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Thanks for having us," Brent replied. The morning passed quickly. Brent helped cut cardboard, told a short story about a raccoon that wanted to fly, and spent a tense hour fixing a wobbly bookshelf. But it was during lunch that something shifted. Brent and Maya sat on a bench in the back while the kids munched on sandwiches and fruit. "You're good with kids," Maya said. "So are you," Brent replied. "Always have been." She looked at him. "I mean it. It's not just about being good with them. You actually understand what they need, even when they don't say it." Brent nodded slowly. "That's something I'm learning. Eli has taught me more this past month than in all the years before." Maya was quiet for a beat. "Part of me was scared, not just because of what happened, but because of what it showed, how fragile trust can be, how easily it can break." "I broke it," Brent admitted. "There's no excuse for that." "No," she agreed softly, "but you're showing up now. That matters." Brent met her eyes. "Can we start over? Not just for Eli, but for us, as people." She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Starting over doesn't mean forgetting, but maybe it can mean moving forward." He gave a faint smile. "I'll take that." They sat together in the gentle afternoon light, saying nothing, just breathing the same air. Around them, children's chatter and the warm scent of peanut butter sandwiches filled the space between regret and second chances. In that quiet moment, Brent realized something profound. Healing wasn't about erasing what had broken, but choosing to pick up each piece and keep building. Even if the birdhouse was never perfect, it would still be theirs, built together. A week after that first Saturday at the community center, Brent found himself waking earlier than usual, not out of obligation, but excitement. The world outside was still dim, but his mind buzzed with energy. He smiled as he glanced at Eli, sleeping peacefully, then slipped into the kitchen, poured himself a cup of coffee, and stepped out onto the back porch. Barefoot, mug warm in his hands, he watched the sky slowly change colors. His phone buzzed on the porch table. A message from Maya. "Don't forget, we're painting the reading room at 10. Eli says he's in charge of the color. I'm already nervous." Brent chuckled, typing back quickly. "Brace yourself for neon green walls and glitter." He stared at the screen a little longer than necessary, his heart beating softly. These conversations felt easy, natural, like the early days before everything went wrong. Yet there was still something between them, something unspoken, a conversation waiting to happen, a truth waiting to be acknowledged. He knew it was coming, and he knew he had to be the one to start it. By 10 o'clock, the community center buzzed with energy. Eli had indeed chosen a loud neon green for one wall, but Maya gently guided him toward a softer mint shade for the others. Glitter, she explained with an arched eyebrow, was non-negotiable. Brent rolled paint high up on the wall, stealing glances at Maya as she carefully trimmed near the windows. She looked relaxed, radiant, and Brent knew this was the moment to finally say the thing that had been on his mind for so long. Maya wore a faded UCLA hoodie and jeans speckled with paint from past projects. Her hair was tied up in a scarf, a streak of blue paint across her cheek that she hadn't noticed. "Missed a spot?" Brent said, nodding toward her face. She wiped the wrong side, and when he pointed again, she laughed. "You're enjoying this a little, aren't you?" He admitted it with a grin. They shared a quiet smile. After lunch, pizza on paper plates and boxed juice, Eli dozed off in a beanbag chair. Maya watched him for a moment before turning to Brent. "Want to take a walk?" she asked. He nodded, following her down the narrow path behind the center. The trail curved through a small park with worn benches and rusty swings. They walked in silence at first, dry leaves crunching underfoot. Then Brent spoke. "There's something I haven't said," he began. Maya glanced at him, but didn't interrupt. "I keep thinking about that night. Not just what happened, but how fast I lost your trust and betrayed the care you've given my son." He drew in a breath. "I want to apologize again, but I know that's not enough. Unless I tell you the real reason." The truth. Maya's expression shifted slightly. "Go on." Brent's eyes stayed fixed on the path. "When I saw Eli hurt that night, my brain didn't process the details. It just exploded. I thought about my wife, about the helplessness of losing her. I think a part of me has been living in a constant what if. What if I miss something? What if I fail him again?" His voice cracked, just for a moment. "And then there he was, bruised, crying, and you were standing there. I didn't see you, not the real you. I saw a threat. I saw danger because I was terrified. And in that fear, I lost sight of everything I knew about you, everything you'd proven time and again." Maya stopped walking. He stopped too. She looked at him, silent for a long moment. "The hardest part," she said, "wasn't that you believed him over me. It was that you didn't stop. You didn't ask. You didn't look me in the eye and give me a chance to explain." "I know," Brent whispered. "That's what I can't forgive myself for." "I'm not asking you to punish yourself," she said gently. "But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about one moment. It's about what that moment revealed, how people like me get seen when something goes wrong, assumed guilty, forced to prove we're innocent instead of the other way around." Brent's shoulders slumped. "I see that now," he said. "And I hate that I didn't before." Maya looked at him, really looked at him, then slowly nodded. "I believe you're sincere." "I am." She started walking again, and he followed. "I still don't know where we go from here," she said after a while. "But I'm not closing the door. Trust, it's like paint. You lay it on in layers, let it dry, and maybe add another coat later." He chuckled softly. "So we're a work in progress, forever." When they got back to the center, Brent looked up at the sky. The clouds had cleared, revealing a soft blue. Inside, Eli was awake, holding a paintbrush and pointing at a blank wall. "Can we paint a rainbow?" he asked. Maya smiled. "Why not?" Brent stepped up beside them, picking up a brush. "Let's make it bright, together." They dipped their brushes into color, into the mess, into something imperfect yet shared. As the first red arc curved, across the wall, Brent knew healing was happening. Not fast, not tidy, but real, one stroke, one word at a time. It was a Tuesday evening when Brent finally made his decision. He stood by the kitchen counter for nearly 20 minutes, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Maya's number. A roast was in the oven, the table carefully set with mismatched napkins Eli loved. He had thought about this invitation for days. Not about the meal, but about something deeper. It wasn't just asking her to dinner. It was offering her a seat in their life again. He exhaled and pressed call. "Maya, hey," she answered, a little breathless. "Sorry, just finished a counseling session. What's up?" He hesitated only a second. "Would you and your hungry stomach like to have dinner with me and Eli? Nothing fancy. Could be a culinary disaster, but it's homemade." There was a brief pause on the line. "Sure," she said. "What time?" 6:30. "Should I bring anything?" Brent smiled. "Just you." By 6:27, Brent had checked the roast 3 times, fluffed the sofa pillows, and smoothed his shirt more times than he wanted to admit. Eli had made a "Welcome back, Miss Maya" sign in crayon and taped it crookedly to the front door. At 6:34, the doorbell rang. He drew a deep breath. This wasn't just dinner, it was a brave step on the road to healing, and this time, he wouldn't let fear take the lead. Eli bolted to the door and yanked it open. Maya stepped inside, her cheeks flushed from the crisp evening air, dressed in a simple wine-colored sweater and jeans. Her smile was shy, almost hesitant. "Wow," she said, glancing around the scene. "Did I walk into the wrong house?" Brent chuckled. "Don't get used to it. This level of coordination only happens under extreme pressure." They made their way to the kitchen, where the table was already set. Brent carefully sliced the roast, while Eli poured lemonade into their glasses, spilling a little, but grinning with pride. Dinner turned out better than expected. The roast was a bit dry, and Brent forgot to warm the bread, but laughter flowed easily. They shared stories from the community center, reminisced about Eli's toddler days, and even joked about the glitter fiasco that left the reading room sparkling for a week. After the dishes were cleared and Eli ran upstairs to play, Maya and Brent lingered at the table. She sipped her tea, eyes wandering around the kitchen. "You know, when I first started working here, this house felt like a museum. Cold, quiet. You hardly said a word." Brent nodded, running his thumb along the rim of his mug. "I wasn't living. I was just existing. Now I'm trying," he said softly. "Not just for Eli, but for me." Maya looked at him thoughtfully. "You're doing more than just trying." He met her gaze. "I still have a lot to learn, about everything, including you." She tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then said, "I know your resume, your background, but I never really asked about your story, who you are outside these walls." Her smile turned gentle. "Most people don't ask." "I want to know," he said quietly. Maya looked down, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "All right, what do you want to know?" "Everything." She laughed softly. "Start small." He leaned forward, genuinely curious. "What made you want to work with kids?" Her smile softened, taking on a touch of reverence. "My grandmother, she was a teacher for 35 years. Growing up in Alabama during segregation, she had to fight just to get into a classroom when black women weren't expected to do anything but clean them. She always said children were the only part of the world still full of hope." Brent listened intently, his chest tightening at the quiet pride in her voice. "She used to tell me, if you plant enough good seeds in a child's heart, the bad stuff won't have room to grow." I wanted to be part of that. He nodded slowly. "She sounds incredible." "She was," Maya said softly. "She passed away 2 years ago. But sometimes I still hear her voice when I help a kid figure something out, like she's standing behind me, arms crossed, watching." "I think she'd be proud of what you're doing," Brent said. Maya's eyes lifted to his. "And I think your wife would be too." The comment caught him off guard. "You think so?" "She married a man who built this life with her, who loved his son deeply. You lost your way for a while, but you're finding it again. I think she'd see that." Brent's throat tightened. He rarely spoke about Rachel, but hearing Maya mention her with respect, without pity, felt like a blessing and a balm all at once. "Thank you," he said quietly. They sat in silence for a moment, the warmth between them natural, unforced. Then Maya rose. "I should go." Brent walked her to the door. As she reached for the handle, she turned back. "Tonight was wonderful." "It really was," he said. "Will you come back?" She held his gaze for a beat. "I think I will." When she stepped into the night, Brent closed the door softly behind her. Upstairs, Eli peeked around the hallway corner. "Did she say she's coming back?" Brent smiled. "She did." The grin that spread across his son's face was all the answer he needed. As Brent switched off the lights and climbed the stairs, he realized this hadn't just been dinner. It was something more, a beginning of belonging again. This time, trust and grace were at the center, and maybe, just maybe, something deeper than friendship was slowly blossoming in the quiet spaces between healing and hope. The weekend arrived with the golden glow of early autumn, leaves whispering change throughout the neighborhood. Eli insisted on raking the front yard, even though he was barely heavy enough to keep the rake on the ground. Brent let him try, watching from the porch as his son gathered a small pile of leaves only to dive into it moments later, laughter spilling out unrestrained. Maya was on her way. She and Brent had planned to spend the afternoon clearing out the garage, a long overdue project that, strangely, he now looked forward to. As Maya's car pulled into the driveway, Eli jumped up and waved wildly. She stepped out, smiling. "Did you just dive into that pile of leaves?" she asked, noticing bits of leaves tangled in his hair. "I made that pile," he declared proudly, "and Dad said I did a good job, even if most of it's back on the grass now." Maya laughed, brushing a stray leaf off his sleeve. "That's the spirit." Inside the garage, the air was thick with years of forgotten things. Old furniture, stacked cardboard boxes teetering like towers. Brent rolled the door up and gestured grandly. "Behold, the place where good intentions go to die." Maya chuckled. "Let's bring them back to life." They began sorting, sifting through dust and memories. Brent unearthed an old photo album, his wedding, baby Eli, Rachel in a hospital gown, holding him for the first time. Maya paused. "She's beautiful." "She was," Brent said softly. "She would have liked you." Maya smiled gently, but said nothing. Later, while going through a box marked art supplies, Maya discovered a wrapped canvas. "What's this?" Brent frowned. "I'm not sure." She peeled away the protective paper, revealing a charcoal and acrylic portrait on canvas. Eli, around 4 years old, nestled in his mother's arms. Rachel's face was serene, her gaze tender and full of love. Maya held it up, awestruck. "It's stunning." Brent exhaled slowly. "Rachel painted this. She never showed it to me." Maya's voice was soft. "She saw something she wanted to keep forever." Brent stared at the painting, his throat tight. "I've been so focused on what I lost. I forgot how much she left behind." Maya picked up a rag and gently wiped the frame clean. "This deserves a place where you can see it." Brent nodded. "You're right." They found a spot in the living room, above the fireplace. Brent hung it carefully, his hands steady. Eli wandered in just as they stepped back to admire it. "Is that Mom?" he asked. Brent knelt beside him. "Yes. Mom painted this of you and her. Isn't it beautiful?" Eli nodded solemnly. "She looks happy." "She was happy," Brent whispered, "whenever she was with you." Maya stood nearby, her expression unreadable. She knew this was a sacred moment, not hers to claim, but hers to witness with quiet honor. Later, they sat on the back porch as the sun began to set. Eli slept on the hammock, the weight of the painting's emotions still lingering in the house. Brent turned to Maya. "I've been thinking?" "Dangerous," she teased. "Seriously," he said with a small smile. "You've become such an important part of our lives, and I don't want to take that for granted, but I also know there are boundaries, and I want to respect them." Maya studied him, thoughtful. "Brent, I didn't come back expecting anything. No promises, no titles. I came back for Eli, and maybe for me, too." He nodded slowly. "But what if I told you I wanted more, that I want to see where this could go? Not because I'm trying to fill a hole, but because you're you." Maya's eyes held his. "I'd tell you I'm scared." "So am I." She reached across the small porch table, her fingertips brushing his. "But being scared doesn't mean we stop. It just means we go slow." Brent turned his hand over, letting her fingers rest there. "Slow is good." They sat like that, hands barely touching. neither in a hurry to break the silence. To be heard, to be seen. That was enough. As twilight deepened and the world softened around them, Brent felt something settle inside him. Not an ending, but a continuation. Rachel would always be there, in paintings, in memories, in Eli's smile. But Maya was here now, in breath, in heartbeat, in presence. And maybe, just maybe, there was room for it all. It all began with a phone call, unexpected, on a quiet Thursday afternoon. Brent was in his home office sorting through old investment files when his phone buzzed. An unfamiliar local number flashed on the screen. He answered without thinking. "Brent Carter?" "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Angela Romero from Glendale Elementary. I'm Eli's teacher." A call that seemed routine, ordinary, turned out to be the start of something unexpected. A moment where past and present would collide, and a long-buried secret would come to light, threatening to change everything Brent and Maya had carefully built. Brent sat upright, his heart pounding in his chest. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause, followed by a soft sigh. "Eli's fine. He's not in trouble. But today, during lunch, something happened. He got into an argument with another student. Some words were exchanged. I thought you should hear it directly from him." Brent's stomach tightened. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived at the school, Maya was already in the main office, looking surprised to see him. "I got the call too," she said. "I was nearby at the library." They walked down the hallway side by side, silent, their footsteps muted on the linoleum floor. With every step, Brent felt his tension climb. Whatever had happened, it wasn't small. They entered a small counseling room. Eli sat on a plastic chair, backpack at his feet, his face pale and closed off. Ms. Angela, his teacher, stood nearby. "Thank you both for coming," she said, nodding at Maya and Brent. Eli got into a heated argument with another student during lunch. It started over something small, a pen, but it escalated quickly. Brent frowned. "Escalated how?" Angela hesitated. The other student, Jason, said something about Maya. He called her the Maid. Suggested Eli was lucky not to be raised by someone like her. Brent's jaw tightened. Maya stood frozen, her face unreadable. "And Eli," Angela continued, "pushed Jason. Not hard, but enough to draw attention." Brent knelt in front of his son. "Is that true, buddy?" Eli nodded, eyes brimming. "He said she doesn't belong with us, that she's just the maid, and I'm stupid for loving her like family." Brent closed his eyes for a moment. Anger flared under his skin, not at Eli, but at the ugliness that had seeped into his son's world. "You're not in trouble," Brent said gently. "But we'll talk about this at home, okay?" Eli nodded again. Angela handed over a slip of paper. "There's no suspension, just a note for the record, but I wanted you both to know. These things, they matter." Outside in the schoolyard, as they walked to the car, Maya was quiet, too quiet. Brent buckled Eli into the back seat and turned to her. "Are you okay?" She shrugged. "I'm used to it." He stepped closer. "You shouldn't have to be." She gave a faint, tired smile. "It's not about me. It's about him. What scares me is that Eli, the kindest, gentlest kid, had to pick a side." Brent exhaled. "He didn't pick a side. He stood up for what matters to him." "But should he have to?" Maya's voice cracked. "Should a child have to defend someone he loves just because the world sees skin color and class before it sees character?" Brent had no answer. Later, at home, Eli curled up on the sofa, exhausted. Brent sat beside him, gently brushing his hair. "You did the right thing, standing up for Maya," he said softly. "I didn't want to hurt him," Eli whispered, "but I was so mad. I love her, Dad, like family." "I know," Brent said, "and she knows too." Eli looked up. "She's not mad at me?" Brent smiled tenderly. "Not one bit. She's proud of you." That night, Brent called Maya. She didn't answer, but texted later. "I just need time to think. I'm okay." The next morning, she came early. Brent had made coffee and muffins, uncertain what mood she'd be in. She took the coffee but didn't sit right away. "I keep thinking about what Jason said," she began. "Not because I haven't heard it before, but because Eli was hurt so easily by it. That kind of cruelty." It doesn't just bruise, it teaches, and I don't want him learning the wrong lessons." Brent nodded. "So what do? We talk to him, we show him, we fill his world with enough truth, enough love, that those lies can't take root." She finally sat down, her shoulders loosening just a bit. "I keep wondering," she admitted quietly, "if being in your life just makes things harder for him." Brent met her eyes, steady and certain. "Maya, you being in his life makes him stronger." His words weren't just comfort. They were a promise, a vow that he would never let that kind of injustice win again. It was a turning point, a moment when affection crossed the old boundaries of prejudice, and healing shifted into something stronger, unshakable. Maya's lips parted, but no words came out. He took her hand. "We're not just trying to rebuild what we had. We're building something new. And yes, it's going to be messy sometimes, but I'm not walking away from this. Not from you, not from Eli's right to love anyone he wants, without shame." She looked down at their intertwined hands, then back up at him. "You're different from when we first met. I'm finally becoming the man I should have been all along." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "Then let's raise him to be better than both of us." That weekend, Maya and Brent took Eli to Griffith Park Observatory, a place Rachel had once loved. Brent hadn't been back since she passed, but now it felt right. They wandered through the exhibits, explored the planetarium, and watched the sun sink below the city from the balcony. As twilight settled, Brent looked over to see Maya standing beside Eli, pointing out Venus through a telescope. He stepped closer. "We're doing okay, aren't we?" he asked quietly. Maya glanced at him, her expression soft. "Yeah," she said. "We're doing okay." And in that moment, as the stars began to glimmer over the city, Brent understood that real love wasn't in grand declarations. It was in what endured, through pain, through change, through every echo of doubt. It was in the quiet, steadfast bonds built at the edge of anger, in the heart of resilience, where a family, unexpected and genuine, was quietly taking root. On Tuesday, an envelope appeared in the mailbox, wedged between a stack of coupons and a realtor's flyer. Brent didn't notice it at first. Not until after dinner, when he was clearing the kitchen counter, did he pick it up. His name was written in a familiar hand, precise, graceful, Rachel. He froze. The world seemed to pause around him. The return address wasn't hers, but Elise's, her sister's. Yet the handwriting was unmistakable. Slowly, Brent opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter with a sticky note on top in Elise's writing. "Found this while going through her things. I think she meant for you to have it, but never got the chance. I hope you're ready to read it." Brent sank into a kitchen chair and unfolded the letter. The cream-colored paper carried a faint trace of lavender, her favorite scent. The words blurred at first, but he blinked hard and focused. "My dearest Brent, if you're reading this, something must have happened that kept me from saying these words face to face. I never wanted that. But life is unpredictable, so I'm writing them down, just in case. You've always been strong, even when you didn't believe it. You've carried the weight of the world, without complaint. But strength isn't only about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go, about choosing to love again when pain wants to keep you locked away. I know you. You'll try to do everything alone. You'll build walls and call it protection. But don't let our son grow up behind those walls. Let him see you vulnerable. Let him see you heal. And one day, if someone comes into your life who sees the light still burning in you, don't push her away. Let her in. Let her love you. Let her love our boy. You deserve joy again. And he deserves a father who remembers how to smile. I give you both my blessing, not to replace what we had, but to continue it, to make something new out of all we were. Forever yours, Rachel." The letter trembled in Brent's hands. A deep ache swelled in his chest, followed by something unexpected. Relief. Permission. Closure. This wasn't just a goodbye. It was a gift. A release. A soft knock came at the door. Maya stood there, coat in hand, hesitant. I was nearby, thought I'd return Eli's sketchbook. He left it in the car after the observatory trip. Brent rose slowly, eyes red but calm. "Come in?" She stepped inside, her gaze flicking to the letter in his hand. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "A letter from Rachel. One she never got to give me." Maya moved closer. "Do you want to talk about it?" He looked into her eyes. "Yeah, I do." They sat on the sofa. Brent read the letter aloud, his voice breaking in places, but Maya stayed silent, her presence steady beside him. When he finished, they sat in quiet, the weight of the letter settling like soft snow. "She knew," Brent said at last. "Even then, she knew I'd need permission to move on." Maya squeezed his hand. "Sometimes the people who love us most see what we're afraid to admit." "I kept thinking that letting someone in meant betraying her memory," he murmured. "But maybe not loving again. Maybe that's the real betrayal." Maya said nothing. She didn't need to. After a while, Brent stood and walked to the fireplace. He removed the small frame photo of Rachel and tucked the letter behind it. Then he turned to Maya. "I need you to know something," he said. "You're not walking in her shadow. You're walking beside it, with your own light." Maya's eyes shimmered. "And you're not the same man you were back then." "No," he said quietly. "Now, I'm more. Because of what I lost, because of what I'm choosing." That evening, she stayed for dinner. Not out of obligation, not out of courtesy, but because something had shifted, something sacred had been named and freed. Eli joined them at the table, chattering happily about school, proudly showing off his latest Lego creation. Laughter filled the room, warm and light, as though the house itself had exhaled after holding its breath for years. After Eli went to bed, Maya lingered by the door. They stood close, the night air cool through the screen. Brent looked at her. "You've become more than I ever expected, more than I knew I needed." Maya stepped closer. "I'm not perfect." "Neither am I," he said. "But together, we're getting it right." She smiled softly, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. "See you tomorrow." When she left, Brent didn't watch the door close. Instead, he looked at Rachel's picture and whispered, "Thank you." Saturday began with a promise of soft sunlight, the warm smell of cinnamon, rolls baking in the oven, and Eli humming as he colored at the kitchen table. Brent leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand, feeling content. Maya would be over in an hour. They planned to take Eli to a neighborhood block party, a thing Brent had avoided for years. But now, with Maya, community felt like something that could heal, not just intrude. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from an unknown number. "Think you can just replace Rachel? People don't forget who you really are, Carter." Brent stared at the screen. The words hit like a bucket of cold water. Another message followed. "Parading a maid around like your new wife. Classy. Bet your boy's head is spinning." His grip tightened on the phone. No name, just venom. He blocked the number, but the chill lingered like a ghost, slipping past walls he thought were strong enough to hold. "Dad?" Eli's voice pulled him back. "You okay?" Brent turned, forcing a calm expression. "Yeah, buddy. Just a weird text. Nothing important." But it didn't feel like nothing. Maya arrived not long after, radiant in a light denim jacket and hoop earrings. Brent didn't mention the texts, not yet. At the block party, Eli dashed off to play. Brent and Maya strolled side by side, greeting neighbors, pausing for small talk with familiar faces. For the first time in a long while, Brent felt like he belonged. The feeling didn't last. Near the lemonade stand, a well-dressed woman in her 60s stepped into their path. Brent recognized her instantly. Linda Holloway, one of Rachel's former colleagues. "Brent," she said coolly, "didn't expect to see you here." "Linda," he replied evenly. "It's been a while." Her eyes slid to Maya. "And this must be the maid." Maya froze. Brent stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "This is Maya Williams. She's part of our family." Linda's brows arched. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Brent didn't flinch. "You don't get to speak about her that way. Not to her, not to me, not ever." People nearby began to turn and watch. Maya touched his arm, murmuring, "Brent, let's go." But he wasn't done. "Let me be clear," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maya has more grace and strength than half the people I've ever met, including you, Linda." Color rose in Linda's cheeks. She spun on her heel and stalked away. Brent turned to Maya, breath tight. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "You did fine," she said softly. "You protected what matters." They left the party early. The ride home was quiet, but between them, something new had formed, a bond, unspoken yet stronger than any words. Brent had stood for her, not out of fear, but out of love. And in that moment, Maya knew his heart had truly changed. Eli stayed carefree, munching on cotton candy and scribbling with chalk, but the air on the back porch had grown heavy. "This morning, I got a message," Brent finally said, anonymous, full of hate, about us. Maya nodded slowly. "That was bound to happen sooner or later. Doesn't make it okay?" "No," she agreed, "but it makes everything real. This us. It's going to upset some people trapped in their own fear." He looked at her, eyes full of raw emotion. "I just didn't think we'd have to fight this hard just to be allowed to exist." "We're not fighting to exist," she said. "We're fighting to be seen clearly, without their lens, without their prejudice." Brent exhaled. "Are you sure this is still what you want? The whispers, the stares, the weight of it all?" Maya turned to face him fully. "Brent, I've carried the weight of judgment my whole life. The only difference now is I don't carry it alone." His throat tightened. "I just don't want you to get hurt." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I've already started healing from the inside." Eli's laughter drifted through the window. "We'll have to teach him," Maya said softly. "Not just how to be kind, but how to be strong when kindness isn't returned." Brent nodded. "And we'll teach him together." That night, as Brent tucked Eli in, the boy looked up at him and asked, "Why was that lady mean to Miss Maya?" Brent hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes people say hurtful things because they're afraid of what they don't understand, or because they think their way is the only right way." Eli blinked, confused. "But Miss Maya's nice. She gives the best hugs." "She does," Brent smiled. "And being kind doesn't always protect you from cruel words, but it helps you rise above them." Eli nodded slowly. "Can I make her a card tomorrow? Like a superhero card?" "That's a great idea," Brent said, kissing his forehead. Later, alone in the quiet living room, Brent reread Rachel's letter. This time, he understood its deepest message: love bravely, even when the world refuses to understand. Let go of fear and step into truth. With Maya beside him, Brent was learning that courage wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was simply showing up, holding someone's hand on the porch and saying, "I'm still here, no matter what they say." The following week passed in a strange rhythm, quiet but tense. One evening, after Brent had dropped Eli off for a sleepover and returned to the echoing house, he found Maya sitting on the back porch. She hadn't texted or knocked. She was just there, arms folded against the evening chill, eyes tired but soft as they gazed at the sky. He sat beside her in silence on the wooden bench. "I keep thinking about that moment with Linda," Maya said quietly. "The way she looked at me, like I wasn't worthy of standing next to you, like I didn't belong in that moment." Brent let out a breath. "I've thought about it too. I keep replaying what I should have said." "It's not your job to fix their ignorance," she said, glancing at him. "But sometimes it's exhausting, carrying the burden of proving you deserve your place." "You shouldn't have to," Brent murmured. "I know," she said softly, "but I do. Because I choose to love someone who doesn't look like me. Because I walk into rooms where I'm judged as lesser before I even open my mouth." He sat there, heart aching. "I'm not fragile," she added. "Don't mistake this for weakness. I've survived worse. But every time it happens, it takes a piece of you. And it hurts knowing that no matter how much I give, to some people I'll always just be the help." Brent reached for her hand. "To me, you're the woman who brought joy back to my son's life, who reminded me how to breathe again, who stood beside me in my hardest moments. I will never let anyone diminish that." She looked at their intertwined hands, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Do you think we're strong enough for what's ahead?" she asked. Brent didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted toward the backyard, where Eli once buried his toy cars. "I think love doesn't promise easy," he said at last. It promises commitment. It promises showing up, staying, even when it's hard. Maya nodded slowly. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "My father would hate this." Brent turned toward her. "He left when I was 10, she continued. Said he couldn't raise a daughter in a world that disrespected him. But the truth was, he couldn't handle love that demanded sacrifice. He always said love was supposed to make life easier, not harder." Brent's voice was gentle as his grip tightened on her hand. "He was wrong," he said. "Love doesn't make everything easy. It makes everything worth it." It was a promise, a quiet vow that he would never walk away from her, no matter what storms came. Then he never understood what love really is. Maya looked at Brent, her eyes shimmering. "Sometimes I wonder if I chose strong men just to prove I was stronger than what he left behind. But what we have, it's not about proving anything. It's about choice. And I choose you," Brent said, his voice steady. Maya leaned into him, letting her head rest on his shoulder. "Even when they whisper, even when they stare, even when they make you doubt, especially then," he replied. They sat like that for a long time, letting the night wrap around them. No more pretending, no more hiding behind good intentions or polite avoidance. They were fully in, no regrets. The next day, Maya returned to the community center and found a surprise waiting. Lisa Huerta, a local journalist, had emailed asking for an interview. Maya hesitated and brought it to Brent. "Do you think I should do it?" she asked, handing him the printed email. "You've changed so many lives, Maya. People deserve to know that." "But you know how this goes," she said. "If I speak publicly, the gossip will come. They'll dig. They'll twist it." "You can handle them," Brent said, "and I'll be right beside you when you do." She looked at him, not just hearing his words, but feeling the resolve behind them. "Then I'll do it," she said. "But on my terms, my way." Brent smiled. "That's the only way I'd want you to." A week later, the article ran. The quiet force behind East Glendale's youth revival. It was powerful, beautifully written, deeply personal. Maya spoke of her grandmother, of education, of lifting up forgotten kids. She didn't mention Brent or Eli, not out of shame, but because the story wasn't about that. Still, the response came fast. Most of it was positive, but the other kind came too. One evening, Brent sat beside her, scrolling through comments, his jaw tight. "This one calls you a charity case turned nanny," he muttered. Maya didn't flinch. "That's mild. Wait until they call me a gold digger." He turned to her. "I hate that you have to expect this." "I have to," she said. "But here's what matters. This week, 2 new volunteers showed up at the center. Both said they came because of that article. That's 2 hearts opened, 2 seeds planted." He took her hand and kissed it. "You amaze me." She met his eyes. "Don't forget, Brent. The stone throwers are loud, but they're not the foundation. We are." That night, for the first time, Brent framed the article and hung it on the wall by the fireplace, just below Rachel's painting. 2 women, 2 legacies, both rooted in love, both shaping the future. As Brent stepped back, his arm around Maya, he knew this wasn't just healing anymore. It was transformation, and it was only the beginning. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, an unexpected knock came at the door. Brent was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew for dinner. Eli was doing homework in the living room. Maya wasn't home yet. She was giving a talk at the community center. The knock came again, firm, deliberate. Brent wiped his hands and opened the door. On the porch stood a tall man, sharply dressed in a navy blazer and polished shoes. "Mr. Carter?" the man asked, his voice deep and even. "Yes. I'm Harrison Bishop, Maya's father." Brent's breath caught. He stared, stunned, and instinctively stepped outside, pulling the door nearly shut behind him. "I didn't know," Brent began, unsure what to say. "She doesn't know I'm here," Harrison said, eyes fixed on the street. "We haven't spoken in years, but I read that article, saw her picture, and thought, maybe it's time." Brent studied the man, older than he'd imagined, maybe late 60s, but still carrying a quiet strength that hadn't faded with age. The resemblance was faint, a certain set of the jaw, a challenging steadiness in the eyes. "Why now?" Brent asked. Harrison's lips pressed into a tight line. This unexpected meeting between two men who both loved Maya in different ways cracked open a new chapter, one filled with questions, with hurt and hope intertwined. Maya's story wasn't just hers anymore. The past had found its way to the door, and it was demanding to be answered. "Because I walked away once, and I've regretted it every day since," Harrison said. "I thought I was protecting her. From the world, from me. But now I see I was only protecting myself from what I didn't understand." Brent crossed his arms, torn between protectiveness and curiosity. "She's strong. She doesn't need saving." "I know," Harrison replied. "She always was, but a daughter deserves a father who shows up, even if it's late." Brent hesitated. "She's speaking at the Glendale Women's Camp tonight. You could come quietly, just listen." Harrison nodded. "That's all I want." That evening, Maya stood on a small stage in a modest room, wearing a wine-colored blouse and gold earrings that caught the light each time she turned her head. Brent sat in the back row with Eli beside him, and in the farthest corner, clad in that navy blazer, Harrison Bishop sat stiffly, watching, silent. Maya spoke about legacy, about building bridges where others had burned them. "I've been told more than once that my place is in the background," she said. "But I've learned that the background is where roots grow deepest. It's where real strength is formed, and sometimes the strongest people are the ones who lift others up instead of climbing for themselves." Brent glanced toward Harrison as the applause swelled. The man's jaw was tight, but his eyes glistened. After the talk, Maya moved through the crowd, accepting hugs and handshakes. Brent gently stopped her before she reached the door. "There's someone here," he murmured. "Who?" she asked, brows knitting. He tilted his head toward the corner. She followed his gaze and froze. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "He came on his own," Brent said softly. "Just wanted to listen." Maya drew in a long, trembling breath, her shoulders rising and falling, as if deciding whether to crumble. "Do you want me to—" Brent began. "No," she said quickly, then quieter. "I'll talk to him." She crossed the room, and Harrison rose as she approached. "You read an article?" she said sharply. "And that made you remember you have a daughter?" "I never forgot," Harrison answered, voice low. "I just didn't know how to come back." "You could have tried," Maya said. "Just once. I thought staying away was doing you a kindness." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. "That's a lie you told yourself to make it hurt less." Harrison's brow furrowed, but he didn't look away. "I read every word of that article and saw a strength I never had. You're not strong in spite of me. You're strong because I left." Maya's eyes shimmered with tears. "You don't get to rewrite that story." "I'm not trying to," he said softly. "I'm asking if there's room to start again. Even just a conversation, every now and then." Maya was silent for a long time, before her voice steadied. "There's a boy in that room named Eli. He's not my blood, but I love him with everything I have. If you want to talk to me, you'll have to earn your place, not through me, but by showing up in his world." Harrison blinked hard. "You're raising someone else's child?" "Helping raise him," she corrected. "And in doing that, I'm healing the little girl who waited years for her father to show up." Tears welled in Harrison's eyes now. "Will I ever get to meet him?" he asked. "We'll see," she whispered, "one step at a time." She turned away, leaving Harrison standing alone. Brent met her halfway, gently placing his hand on her back. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I said what needed saying." That night, after tucking Eli into bed, Brent found Maya sitting on the porch, staring into the dark. "Do you regret meeting him?" Brent asked quietly. "No," Maya said. "I regret that I ever needed it." Brent sat beside her, lacing his fingers with hers. "You were incredible tonight." "I wasn't trying to be," she murmured. "I just didn't want silence anymore." They sat in a stillness that felt like healing. Brent kissed her temple. "You don't have to carry any of it alone," he whispered. And in that moment, with the past confronted and the present affirmed, Maya leaned into him, not running from echoes anymore, but stepping forward with the strength of truth and a future waiting to be written. Fall deepened. Trees turned from gold to fiery red, the air sharper, crisper. Brent started walking Eli to school every morning, a new ritual that gave them time to talk, laugh, or simply walk together in comfortable silence. Slowly, steadily, life was becoming something better, piece by piece. Maya often joined them on Fridays, holding Eli's hand as he skipped between them, unaware that his joy was stitching their lives back together. But on a crisp Thursday morning, something shifted. Brent received a call from Gordon Lier, a longtime business partner. Gordon's tone was casual at first, but then it changed. "Listen, Brent," Gordon said. "Off the record. I've been hearing some whispers from board members." "Concerns?" Brent frowned. "Concerns about what?" Gordon hesitated. "About your recent appearances, the article, the photos, the woman." "You mean Maya?" Brent said bluntly. "I'm not saying it's fair," Gordon rushed to clarify. "But the reality is, a few conservative clients are starting to question your judgment. You're in the spotlight and, well, your personal choices are bleeding into business optics." Brent's hand tightened around the phone. "So I'm supposed to hide the woman I love to protect someone else's comfort?" "I'm just saying, be cautious. This isn't just your reputation anymore. There are investments, partnerships, a legacy tied to your name." Brent hung up without another word. The rest of the day he simmered in silent anger. When Maya arrived that evening, she sensed something was wrong. "You've got that jaw-clenched look," she murmured, "like you're chewing bricks." He handed her a glass of wine and sat beside her on the sofa. "Got a call from Gordon, an old partner. He says people are talking about us." Maya's face stayed calm. "They're not talking about us," she said quietly. "They're talking about me." Brent looked at her. "I'm not sorry for loving you." "I know," she said, "but they think you should be. And that's the part that hurts." He stared at the floor. "Do you think I was naive to believe we could move forward, build something real, and the world would just adjust?" Maya took his hand. "Number, I think you're brave, but bravery doesn't make the road easy. It just means we keep walking it." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I don't want to lose what I've built, Maya, but I won't lose you to keep it." She held his gaze for a long moment. "Then maybe it's time we show them exactly who we are, not to justify it, but to own it." The opportunity came sooner than expected. The Glendale Business Foundation hosted its annual gala. This time, Brent RSVP'd for 2. When Maya walked into the ballroom in a midnight blue gown and her grandmother's pearls, the room seemed to pause, conversations dipping. Brent stood beside her, his hand lightly on her back. He whispered, "You're both the storm and the calm." She smiled. "Then let's give them something worth whispering about." All evening, Maya held her head high, engaging politicians and philanthropists, answering backhanded compliments with sharp grace. "And what do you do, dear?" one woman asked. "I build bridges," Maya said with a knowing smile. "Between children and their future, between communities and the people they've forgotten." The woman blinked, taken aback. Brent watched her the entire night, pride swelling in his chest. Maya was magnetic, unshakable. She didn't shrink to fit anyone's expectations. She expanded the room with nothing but her presence. Later, on the rooftop under strings of golden lights, Brent and Maya danced. "Do you think we changed anyone's mind tonight?" she asked softly. "Maybe not," he said. "But we changed the story they'll tell about us." She leaned back slightly, eyes glimmering. "And maybe some little girl saw me tonight and thought, one day that could be me." Brent kissed her forehead. "That's the only legacy worth chasing." When the gala ended and they stepped out to their car, Brent's phone buzzed. This time, it was a text from Gordon. "Saw you two tonight. She's impressive. Maybe I need to see for myself." Brent showed it to Maya. She glanced at it and shrugged. One down, a few million to go. But she smiled, and so did he. Because when the winds begin to shift, it doesn't happen all at once. It starts with whispers, with quiet footsteps. On nights like this, when the past is challenged and the future leans forward, waiting to be claimed, they walked into the dark, their shadows long, their hearts light. And somewhere in that night, the world moved just a little, just enough. The morning after the gala, Brent sat at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand. Maya stood by the stove, flipping pancakes. Eli hummed a tune from a cartoon movie. The air felt like family, warm, It was everything Brent once thought he would never have again, until the phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but something in his gut tightened. He answered cautiously. "Hello, Mr. Carter." The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Detective Carla Monroe with the Glendale Police Department. I need to ask you a few questions regarding a complaint filed about you." Brent froze. "What complaint?" "A formal report was submitted regarding the welfare of your son, Eli Carter. We received an anonymous tip suggesting possible neglect or inappropriate conduct in your household." Maya turned around at the sound of his sharp inhale. "Is this some kind of joke?" Brent asked, his voice low. "I assure you this is standard procedure," Monroe replied. "We are required to follow up on any concerns reported to us. I'd like to arrange a home visit to speak with you and your son." When the call ended, Brent sat motionless. Maya touched his shoulder gently. "What is it?" "Child Protective Services," he whispered. "Someone filed a complaint about Eli, about us." Maya's face went pale. "Number who would do that?" He met her eyes, his own narrowing. "Linda, or someone from the board, or just someone with a grudge," Maya murmured. "Someone who thinks our family doesn't look right." The rest of the day was wrapped in tense fog. Brent called his lawyer. Maya reached out to the community center director. Eli, blissfully unaware, spent the afternoon drawing rocket ships in the backyard. When the visit came, Detective Monroe arrived calm and professional. She chatted warmly with Eli, asking about school, bedtime routines, favorite foods. Maya observed everything with a practiced calm, stepping in only when needed. When Monroe finally turned to Brent and said, "I see no signs of concern. Eli is clearly well loved and well cared for." The relief was sudden and overwhelming. That night, after Eli went to bed, Brent poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed one to Maya. They sat in the dim glow of the living room lamp. "This is retaliation," Brent said. "For the article, for the gala." Maya sipped slowly. "For existing. For refusing to apologize. I want to fight back," he said. "I want to find out who did this and expose them." She looked at him over the rim of her glass. "And then what? Humiliate them? Give them more reason to twist the story? I want to protect you, and Eli." "I know," she said softly. "But the best protection we have is staying calm, holding our heads high, letting them attack from the shadows while we stand in the light." Brent leaned back, exhaling. "Sometimes you're stronger than I am." "I've had more practice," she said with a sad smile. A knock at the door interrupted them. Brent rose cautiously. When he opened it, a small envelope lay on the doorstep. No sign of anyone around. He brought it inside, opened it. Inside was a printed photo, Maya and Eli at the park laughing together, and a line scrawled in red ink beneath. "He's not yours. You're not welcome." Brent's blood ran cold. Maya stood behind him, her face pale. "This is escalating," he said. "This isn't just judgment anymore. This is a threat." She stepped back, voice steady but trembling slightly. "We have to call the police. Give this to them. And Eli. He can't see this. He can't know." Brent nodded. "He won't. But Maya, this isn't just about us anymore. Someone's watching, which means we're at a crossroads." Maya met his gaze, heart pounding. "So what do we do?" "We stop hiding. We go public again. We tell our story before someone else writes it for us." Brent hesitated. "That could make us bigger targets." "We're already targets," she said firmly. "So let's show them. We won't be scared off." 2 days later, Maya agreed to a national podcast interview hosted by a prominent black journalist. It wasn't just an interview, it was a statement, a deliberate act of courage to protect their love and their family from the people trying to tear it apart. Maya joined a 1-hour interview, covering everything from her childhood and work at the community center to her role in Eli's life, and even the threats they had received. Brent listened from the studio booth, jaw tight, heart full. "I don't want to be a symbol," Maya said. "I want to be a woman who loves deeply and refuses to shrink for anyone. I want my son to grow up knowing that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, 'I will not move.'" When the episode aired, support flooded in from across the country. People saw themselves in Maya's voice. Then a letter arrived, typed, no return address. You were right. We were wrong to judge. That boy is lucky. And so are you. For the first time in weeks, Brent exhaled without feeling the weight of shadows watching him. Maya stood beside him, arms folded, eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the porch. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Feel what?" "The wind," she said. "It's not just changing anymore. It's lifting us." He nodded. "Maybe it's carrying us to something better." In the silence that followed, there was peace, not because the world had stopped judging, but because they had stopped letting it define them. A week passed. The podcast had sparked a kind of collective awakening. Maya's inbox overflowed with messages, teachers asking for curriculum samples, community leaders requesting speaking engagements, even a television network expressing interest in turning her story into a documentary. But not all the responses were positive. One afternoon, Brent received a letter directly at his law office. It was typed, clear, and precise, a threat of litigation. The sender, the legal representative of Linda Hartman, she was suing for defamation, claiming Maya's public statements had damaged her personal reputation and professional standing. Brent read the letter 3 times. "Linda's suing me?" Maya asked when he told her that evening, her voice more surprised than angry. "Technically, she's suing me," Brent replied. "She's arguing that your comments on the podcast portrayed her in a false light and caused harm. I didn't even say her name. She's claiming people knew who you meant." Maya leaned against the counter, rubbing her temples. "So she tries to sabotage our family, files a false report, and now she's playing the victim?" Brent sighed. "She doesn't just want to win. She wants to silence you." Maya slowly shook her head. "Then we have to make sure she fails." Brent reached out to a renowned civil rights law firm in Los Angeles. They agreed to represent Maya pro bono, recognizing the broader implications. Maya wasn't just a woman defending herself. She had become a voice in a much larger conversation. That weekend, Brent and Maya sat down for an interview with a journalist from the Los Angeles Tribune. "We're done being grateful for scraps of acceptance," Maya said. "This family wasn't built in fear, and it won't live in it." Brent added, "Our story might not sit well with everyone, but it's real, and we refuse to let anyone, no matter how powerful, decide it's worth less because it doesn't look like theirs." The article went viral within 24 hours. Suddenly, Maya wasn't just the woman who helped kids after school. She was hailed as a leader, a symbol of resilience. From that visibility, new alliances emerged. A coalition of mothers launched a grassroots network inspired by Maya's work, calling themselves the Porchlight Project. Even Brent, who preferred staying behind the scenes, began speaking more openly. At Eli's school fundraiser, he gave a short but powerful speech. "Families come in all shapes and colors," he said. "What defines us isn't blood, it's the bonds we build, and ours have been tested, but they haven't broken." Afterward, an older man approached. "I wasn't sure at first about all this," he said, "but I've seen the way that boy looks at her. That kind of trust. You earn it. You've got a good one." Brent nodded, as unable to speak through the lump in his throat. But just as things began to stabilize, the lawsuit escalated. A court date was set. As it drew near, Maya remained outwardly calm, but Brent noticed the subtle signs. The later nights, the tension in her shoulders, the long silences. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, she finally broke. "I hate that I'm scared," she whispered. "Not of losing, of being humiliated, of standing in a room full of people analyzing every word I say, every breath I take, as if I need permission to exist." It was a moment of vulnerability, but it was also the bedrock on which their shared strength would rise. Brent took Maya's hand, his voice steady but soft. "You don't have to be fearless, Maya, just honest. That's what makes you strong." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "If I cry on that stand, if my voice shakes, then maybe every woman who's ever been silenced will see that there's strength in not pretending." She exhaled, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I just want Eli to grow up in a world where love isn't punished." "He will," Brent said firmly, "because you're helping build that world." On the morning of the trial, Maya wore a navy blue suit, sharp, elegant, dignified. Brent's hand stayed firmly clasped around hers as they walked into the courthouse, past the press cameras and the low hum of murmurs. Inside, Linda sat flanked by two attorneys, her face an unreadable mask. When Maya took the stand, the questions came sharp and deliberate, designed to make her falter. "Do you consider yourself a public figure, Ms. Williams?" "No," Maya replied calmly. "I consider myself a woman telling the truth." "And you believe your statements weren't aimed at anyone specific?" "I believe I told my story, and if someone saw themselves in it, maybe that says more about them than it does about me." Her voice wavered at times, her hands trembled, but not once did she look away or retreat from their gaze. 3 days later, the verdict was delivered. Maya won. The judge's words were clear and cutting. In a society increasingly shaped by narratives, we must protect the right to share lived experiences. Ms. Williams' words, though emotional, are rooted in truth. This court affirms that sometimes discomfort is the price of justice. Outside, reporters swarmed. Brent instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from the chaos. But Maya moved forward, composed and unshaken. "We're not asking to be special," she said, her voice steady. "We're asking to be seen." As they left hand in hand, Eli came running, wrapping his little arms around her waist, pride glowing in his smile. The storm hadn't broken them. It had revealed them. The court victory didn't just close a chapter. It opened a new one. For Maya, it marked the end of defending her right to exist and the beginning of shaping the future on her own terms. For Brent, it brought a sharp, unshakable clarity about what mattered most: truth, love, and protecting the life they were building together. For Eli, it meant one simple thing. His mom walked taller now, laughed more often, and no longer flinched at the sound of a knock on the door. One late afternoon, the three of them sat on the back porch. Eli was drawing on a big piece of cardboard. "This is a rocket," he said proudly. Then he pointed to a figure inside it. "And this is you, Maya. You're flying it." "Where am I going?" she asked. "To the stars. That's where brave people go." Maya swallowed hard, eyes damp, as Brent's hand found hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. Yet beneath the sweetness of their new routine, a thread still tugged at Maya, a loose end named Harrison. She hadn't spoken to her father since their brief meeting at the women's shelter. She hadn't decided if he had a place in her life or if he ever could. Then, one afternoon, as she sorted files at the community center, a white envelope arrived, handwritten, careful, hesitant. "Maya, I saw your interview. You stood there with a steel spine and a merciful heart. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you'll let me say one thing face to face. If you're willing, I'll be at Granger's Diner on Sunday noon. I'll wait an hour. If you don't come, I'll understand. Dad." Maya stared at the letter for a long time. That night, she told Brent. "Do you want to go?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm tired of wondering if I should." He nodded. "Then go. If it doesn't bring peace, at least it'll bring an answer." Sunday came under a gray sky, the kind that makes colors feel sharper. Granger's Diner was nearly empty when Maya pushed open the door. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. Harrison sat in the far corner, looking older, smaller, his jacket hanging loose on a frame that once seemed larger. This was the moment to face the past, not just for Maya, but for the family she was still learning how to build. Harrison stood when he saw her. "Maya," he said, like a breath that had been trapped for years. She slid into the booth across from him. "I wasn't sure I'd come." Harrison took a slow sip of coffee. "I keep replaying the past like a broken record, trying to find the moment I became the man who vanished from his daughter's life." Maya folded her arms on the table. "And did you find it?" "Not exactly," he admitted, "but I know shame had a big hand in it, and fear. You let Mom raise me alone. You missed every school play, every fever, every heartbreak. I know. And yet I still search for your face at every recital, every birthday. For the longest time, I thought I did something to make you leave." His face tightened, pained. "I can't erase that hurt. I can't take credit for the woman you've become. But I can tell you this. I've never admired anyone more." She blinked hard, fighting emotion. "You can't just admire me from a distance forever." "I'm not asking for forever," he said quietly. Just a start. Something small. If Eli allows it, I'd like to meet him one day. No pressure, just to see the world you've built." Maya studied him, past the lines carved by regret, to see the man trying to step into the space he once abandoned. "I don't know if I'll ever call you Dad again," she said frankly, "but I'm willing to see who you are now." He nodded, eyes shining. "That's more than I deserve." They sat in silence after that, not the heavy, punishing kind, but the kind that leaves room for something new to grow. That weekend back home, Maya received another envelope, this time from the mayor's office. Inside was an invitation to speak at Glendale's annual city forum. This year's theme, redefining justice. Maya held up the letter for Brent to see. "They want me to give a speech." He smiled. "Of course they do." She hesitated. "I'm no politician or expert." "You're more than that," he said. "You're living proof that justice begins in a family." When the night of the forum arrived, Maya stepped onto the stage before hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Harrison sat beside Brent and Eli in the front row. She didn't start with statistics or policy, but with a story. About a little girl waiting for a father, about a boy learning how to trust again, about bridges that take years to rebuild, and moments that can destroy them. "My name is Maya Williams," she said. "I'm not perfect. I'm not a symbol. I'm a daughter. I'm a mother by choice. I'm a woman who decided not to shrink. And if justice has taught me anything, it's that it rarely arrives with applause, but in the quiet choices we make to show up, even when it's hard." The entire room rose to its feet. Applause like thunder. That night, as the family drove home, Eli's voice piped up from the back seat. "Were you nervous, Maya?" "So nervous," she admitted. "But you didn't look scared," he said. She smiled softly. "That's because I wasn't alone." Brent reached over and clasped her hand on the gear shift. She squeezed it tight. The past hadn't broken them. The noise hadn't silenced them. And as they rounded the final bend of this long, winding road, Maya knew one thing for certain. Justice wasn't a destination. It was a way of walking, and she had found her stride. The autumn air clung sweetly to the morning as Brent pushed open the front door. Maya stood in the kitchen, humming softly while packing Eli's lunch. Life had found a rhythm now, a steadiness they hadn't known a year ago. Eli darted down the hallway, his backpack bouncing. "Did you remember my comic book?" he asked. Maya unzipped the front pocket. "Right here, Captain." Brent ruffled Eli's hair. "Big day at school, huh?" Eli beamed. "We're doing presentations about heroes. I picked Maya." Maya froze, the spoon suspended midair. "You picked me?" Eli nodded proudly. "Everyone else picked superheroes." I said, "Mine makes people really feel safe." Her eyes filled, and she knelt to hug him tight. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." Later, after dropping Eli at school, Brent and Maya drove in discomfortable. Silence, his hand wrapped around hers on the gear shift. "Did you ever think we'd make it here?" he asked. She smiled. "Number. But I fought with everything I had for this." Their destination that morning was the groundbreaking of a new community center in East Glendale, a building funded by private donors and city grants, with Maya's vision at its heart. Brent had used his influence to clear permits and navigate red tape, but the soul of it was hers. As they stepped out of the car, a crowd had already gathered. This wasn't just a construction project. It was a living monument to Maya's resilience, to her quiet strength, and to Brent's unwavering love for the woman who had changed both their lives. News cameras rolled, families gathered, local leaders stood shoulder to shoulder. Harrison lingered toward the back, hands clasped in front of him, a quiet pillar of support. The mayor spoke about progress and the resilience of a community, then introduced Maya. She stepped forward, calm and steady. "My story isn't anything special," she began. "Far too many children grow up unseen. Far too many families slip through cracks carved by neglect or indifference. But places like this, they can be anchors." She paused, letting the silence hold. "Today, we're not just breaking ground on a building. We're breaking silence. We're building a place where a child like Eli never has to lie about being loved, where a woman like me no longer has to apologize for existing." Applause thundered through the crowd. Brent sat in the front row, his gaze glowing with pride. Maya stepped down to him. Together, they lifted the ceremonial shovel, scooped a small patch of earth, and began a new chapter. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in soft gold, they gathered on the back porch. Eli had dragged out a blanket, insisting everyone lie beneath the stars. Harrison sat a respectful distance away, sipping warm apple cider. Brent gazed upward and murmured, "It's strange to think how much can change in a single year." Maya smiled softly. "And how some things stay the same?" Eli yawned. "When I grow up, I want to help people too. Like you and Brent." "You already do," Brent said, pulling him close. "You remind us what brave love looks like." Harrison cleared his throat, voice low and heavy with meaning. "I miss so much, but sitting here now, watching this, it feels like I've been given a second life." Maya turned to him, warm but firm. "Then use it." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I will." They sat there a while longer, in silence that felt safe, surrounded by the warmth of what they had built together. Later, after Harrison left and Eli was tucked in bed, Brent and Maya stood in the hallway, eyes drifting over photos taped to the wall. One was from Eli's school presentation, a glittery poster with Maya's face in the center, surrounded by hearts and the words, "My hero." "I never thought I'd end up in anyone's hero story," she whispered. Brent turned to her. "You've always been mine." She leaned her forehead against his chest. "What do you think happens next?" "We live," he said, clear and certain. She stepped back, smiling. "Then let's do that." Months passed. The community center opened its doors. Eli grew bolder, his confidence blooming like spring after a long frost. Brent turned down a lucrative deal when it threatened affordable housing in their neighborhood. Harrison began mentoring young fathers at the center. And Maya's voice became more than a call for justice. It became a beacon of hope. One evening, Maya found a letter slipped into her mailbox, no return address. She unfolded it carefully. "Ms. Williams, I was one of the people who judged you once. I thought your love was misplaced. But after hearing your story, after seeing what you've built, I realize I was wrong. You changed my mind. Thank you for that. P.S. My daughter just joined your reading circle. She came home today and said she wants to grow up to be just like you." Maya closed her eyes and pressed the letter to her chest. Outside, Eli's voice rang through the door. "Maya! Brent, come see the sunset." They stepped out together. The sky blazed like a watercolor of fire and gold. Eli danced barefoot in the grass. Brent wrapped an arm around Maya's shoulders. "We did it," he whispered. "No," Maya said softly, smiling. "We're doing it. Because healing was never a destination. Justice was never a single moment. And love was never meant to be an ending.